Grand Admiral Vosk Tharnil, had commanded the Syndrol Imperial Fleet for 31 years, had crushed 6 rebellions, and annexed 4 star systems, and had never once in his career felt his hands shake on the bridge of his own flagship. They were shaking now. "Confirm the readings," he said, his voice tight. "Confirm them again." His sensor officer, a young Thrall named Apara, didn't look up from her console. Her 4 eyes were wide, each one reflecting the same impossible number. "Confirmed, Grand Admiral. Mass displacement, hull density, energy signature. All consistent. That ship out there generates a gravitic wake 3 times larger than anything in our registry. It shouldn't exist. It shouldn't be able to exist." On the view screen, a single vessel hung silhouetted against the burning wreckage of an Imperial listening post. A station that, 11 minutes earlier, had housed 400 soldiers, and had been, by every measure available to Syndrol engineering, unassailable. It was not unassailable anymore. "That's not a warship," muttered Fleet Marshal Desencourt, arriving breathless onto the bridge, still fastening the last clasp of his uniform. "That's barely the size of a Corvette. It can't have done this." "And yet," Vosk said quietly, "it did." But no one expected what happened next, because as the Syndrol fleet watched in stunned silence, the small human vessel did not retreat into the dark to savor its victory. It turned, slowly and deliberately, until its bow pointed directly at the 17 warships of the Grand Admiral's strike fleet. The largest offensive force the Syndrol Empire had assembled in over a decade. And opened a communications channel. "This is Commander Elias Thorne of the Earth Defense Vessel Providence." "Ta," a calm voice said, threading through every bridge speaker in the fleet. "You are currently occupying territory that does not belong to you, hunting a species that never declared war on your empire, and standing over the wreckage of a station that fired on a civilian transport 11 minutes ago. I gave that station a chance to stand down. I am now giving you the same chance." Silence swallowed the bridge of the flagship. 17 warships, Vosk breathed, and he speaks to us as though we're the ones who should be afraid. None of this had begun that way 4 days earlier. The Syndrol Empire had never heard the word human. Their scanners had detected an anomalous vessel, drifting near the edge of Thrall space. Small, unremarkable, running on what their analysts dismissed as primitive fusion drives. Grand Admiral Vosk had not even bothered attending the briefing, personally. He had assigned a junior officer to investigate, expecting nothing more than a derelict scout ship or a lost merchant vessel from some backwater species not yet worth conquering. That junior officer, Lieutenant Severin Al, had approached the vessel with 2 escort frigates and a boarding party, following standard first contact protocol. Hail first, board if unresponsive, annex if valuable. The vessel had not responded to hails. It had also, according to Severin's final transmission, not been drifting. It was watching us. Then the transmission cut out entirely. Everything changed in the next few seconds. When search vessels arrived 6 hours later, they found both Syndrol frigates disabled but intact, their crews alive and unharmed, weapons systems methodically dismantled rather than destroyed. There were no casualties. There was, however, a message left on an open frequency, translated into flawless Syndrol dialect. "We're not looking for a fight, we're looking for a missing science vessel that entered this region 3 weeks ago and never checked back in. If you've seen it, tell us. If you haven't, stay out of our way while we look." Grand Admiral Vosk had laughed when he heard the recording. An entire species, unknown to Syndrol intelligence, disabling 2 armed frigates without firing a single lethal shot, and then politely asking for directions. "They're either supremely confident," he had told his staff, "or supremely foolish. Find out which." The council had made a terrible mistake, though none of them knew it. Vosk dispatched a full strike group to the coordinates the strange vessel had come from, determined to make an example of whatever primitive species had dared humiliate the Syndrol Empire. Even accidentally, what his intelligence division failed to mention, because they did not yet know it themselves, was the missing science vessel the humans were searching for, belonged to a small research outpost of the Thrall, a species the Syndrol Empire had been quietly enslaving for 6 years under the guise of a protective annexation. The strike group found the Thrall research station first. And they found something else waiting there too. Dr. Mireille Okonkwo Chen, had never expected her deep space botanical survey to become a hostage situation. She and her three-person science crew had been cataloging bioluminescent flora on a moon within Threl territory when Syndral Marines stormed their outpost, not for the plants, but because the outpost's sensor logs had recorded the passage of an unidentified human vessel 3 weeks prior, the same vessel Commander Thorne was now searching for. "You will explain your presence in Syndral-administered space," the Marine commander had told her, translator crackling with poorly calibrated grammar, "or you will be detained as spies." Mireille, 41 years old and utterly unwilling to be intimidated by a man pointing a plasma rifle at her research team, had simply crossed her arms. "This isn't Syndral space. Your own star charts, which I've read, place the boundary 6 light-years from here, and I'm not a spy, I'm a botanist." Nobody knew what the human was hiding, not weapons, not secrets, but something far more dangerous to an empire built on conquest, proof, because Mireille's science team had spent 4 months quietly documenting Syndral supply convoys moving through supposedly neutral Threl territory. Convoys carrying enslaved Threl laborers to mining operations. The Empire didn't officially acknowledge existed, it was that Earth's diplomatic corps had been waiting for. Evidence that could finally justify direct intervention in a region humanity had, until now, remained carefully uninvolved in. The Marine commander seized her equipment, arrested her crew, and marched them toward a transport shuttle, unaware that Mireille had already transmitted every byte of that data to the 40 minutes earlier, the moment Syndral ships first appeared on her scanners. That wasn't even the biggest surprise, because Commander Elias Thorne wasn't simply searching for a lost science vessel. He had been assigned, quietly, and without fanfare, to investigate persistent rumors of Threl disappearances along the Syndral border, rumors that Earth's cautious diplomatic establishment had, until this moment, dismissed as unverifiable. Mireille's data changed everything. Elias Thorne was not, by human military standards, a remarkable officer. He had graduated in the middle of his class at the academy, had commanded nothing larger than a reconnaissance corvette, and possessed no particular reputation beyond a talent for patience that occasionally frustrated his more aggressive colleagues. The Providence itself was equally unremarkable in appearance. Small, functional, lacking the aggressive silhouette that other species associated with warships. What the Syndral Empire did not know, what almost no alien power fully understood, was that human vessels were never designed to look intimidating, they were designed to survive. When Elias received Mireille's data burst, confirming both her crew's capture and evidence of systematic Threl enslavement, he did not hesitate, and he did not panic. He gathered his small crew of 11 on the bridge, laid out the situation plainly, and asked a single question. "We're authorized for reconnaissance only. Direct engagement with a Syndral strike group would violate our mission parameters and could be considered an act of war." He paused. "I want to hear objections before I make a decision." His weapons officer, a quiet man named Priya Fad, spoke first. "Objection or not, sir, if we don't move, 4 civilians and an unknown number of Threl slaves die on our watch while we file a report." "Agreed," Elias said. "That wasn't a request for permission. I wanted to know if anyone disagreed with what I'm about to do." The truth stunned everyone aboard, though it would soon stun the entire galaxy, far more, because what Elias did next was not, by any conventional military logic, a rational decision. He set an intercept course for a listening post, garrisoning 400 Syndral soldiers, a facility bristling with point defense weapons and shield generators rated to withstand a small planetary bombardment. And he did it, in a ship 1/20th its mass. The listening post commander laughed when the Providence appeared on long-range scanners, dismissing it as a lost merchant vessel blundering into hostile space. That laughter died the moment Elias transmitted a single warning. "Stand down, release the Threl captives, and no lives would be lost." And the post responded by opening fire without hesitation. Everything changed in the next few seconds. Providence's shields, built from technology humanity had spent 40 years quietly refining, after a century of hard lessons learned the expensive way, absorbed the barrage without so much as flickering. Elias did not return fire immediately. Instead, his ship executed a maneuver Syndrol tactical computers couldn't predict. A series of micro-adjustments that placed the Providence inside the post's own point defense blind spot, close enough that the station's heavier weapons couldn't depress far enough to target it. Then, and only then, did the Providence respond. Not with overwhelming force, but with surgical precision, disabling shield generators and weapon emplacements while carefully avoiding the detention block where the captives were held. 11 minutes later, the listening post's defenses asses were a-smoking ruin. Its garrison surrendered without a single fatality on either side, and Murray's science team walked free alongside 43 liberated Threll laborers who had been awaiting transport to a mining colony that, officially, did not exist. The princess had overlooked one crucial detail. For the Threll ambassador, who would later hear this story, was, in fact, Threll royalty in hiding, disguised among the laborers to investigate her people's disappearances personally. She had expected to die in that mining colony. She had not expected to be rescued by a single human ship that outmaneuvered an entire garrison without killing anyone who didn't shoot first. Which brought Grand Admiral Vosk Tharnil, 17 warships, and a species that had never lost a war in 3 centuries, face to face with a Corvette-sized vessel that had just humiliated an entire Imperial garrison. "Stand down your weapons," Elias repeated, his voice steady over the open channel. "Release any Threll citizens currently in Syndrol custody within this sector, and I will consider this matter resolved without further refuse, and I will treat your fleet the same way I treated that station." Fleet Marshal Desencourt laughed bitterly. "One ship against 17. You expect us to believe you could." "I don't expect you to believe anything," Elias interrupted, not unkindly. "I expect you to check your own sensor logs from the station we just left and ask yourselves honestly whether the math changes with 16 more targets." The Queen suddenly froze. Though in this case, it was not a queen, but Grand Admiral Vosk himself. Staring at tactical projections, his own officers were too afraid to voice aloud that a single, human vessel had disabled defenses rated for planetary bombardment, done so without a single confirmed kill, and was now calmly offering the single largest fleet in Syndrol military history the exact same terms he'd given 400 soldiers. "He's not bluffing," Apara whispered. "Grand Admiral, the data doesn't lie. If even a fraction of that station's outcome repeats here." "I am aware of the mathematics, Lieutenant," Vosk snapped. Though his voice carried none of its earlier confidence, the bridge held its breath. Nobody had expected the Empire's greatest strategist to hesitate, but hesitation, in this moment, was the only intelligent choice remaining. Vosk Tharnil had crushed 6 rebellions in 31 years of service. He had never once retreated from a fight he believed he could win. But he had also never faced an opponent whose calm certainty suggested, unmistakably, that this was not a fight the human commander expected to lose. And worse, was not a fight he even particularly wanted. "Release the Threll prisoners," Vosk finally said, each word costing him visibly. "All of them. Recall our forces from Threll territory pending a full review by the Imperial Council." Desencourt stared at him in disbelief. "Grand Admiral, you cannot possibly intend to surrender an entire strike fleet to." Vosk said quietly, "I am choosing which battles are worth 400 more lives, and which are not. That is the difference between a soldier and a butcher, Fleet Marshal. Today, I choose to still be the former." Word of the standoff reached Earth's diplomatic corps within days, then spread through Allied networks within weeks, and eventually, inevitably, reached every corner of explored space. The story shifted with each retelling, growing taller with every jump between star systems, until finally it reached a form the galaxy could not stop repeating. That an empire spanning 40 worlds had assembled its greatest fleet against a single human ship and had blinked first. The truth stunned the entire galaxy, though the truth, as always, was quieter and more human than the legend it became. Elias Thorne had not won through overwhelming force or fearless aggression. He had won because he understood something the Syndrol Empire, for all its conquests, had never learned. That certainty born from discipline was far more dangerous than certainty born from strength, and that a species willing to risk everything for people who owed them nothing, was a species that could never truly be predicted, or defeated, by an enemy who only understood domination. Months later, seated across from the freed Thrall princess in a quiet diplomatic reception aboard Earth's newest embassy station, Elias was asked the question everyone eventually asked him. Were you afraid, facing 17 warships in a ship that small? Elias considered the question honestly, the way he considered most things. I was afraid the whole time, he admitted. But I've learned that fear doesn't disqualify you from doing what's right. It just means you understood the stakes. He looked out at the stars, at the quiet lights of a galaxy that had, in the span of a single mission, learned an entirely new definition of what a warship could be. Not the size of its guns or the thickness of its armor, but the size of the conviction behind the hand that fired them. That's the thing about humanity, he said finally. We were never trying to be the strongest ship in the room. We just refuse to be the ones who look away.